So what I've got is a barrel back from being bored, honed, blasted and painted. So there's a few things I'm going to check on the barrel. One of them is this head surface. I'm going to hone this, I'm going to lap it on a sheet of glass with some valve grinding paste. On the Bantams I rebuild and the Bantams I run, I don't use a head gasket. I just don't use one. I just use a metal to metal surface. I don't put anything on, just make sure it's nice and clean. Some people put silicone and all that sort of, I don't even bother about that. I just make sure my head surfaces are all right. And there's plenty of motorbikes around that don't run head gaskets. Next thing I'll check is I'll just run my finger in to the edge of all the ports to make sure they're not knife edged. These are always pretty good because the guy who does my boring and everything like that, he actually dresses off the edges of all the ports, so I know this is going to be good, but I still check just in case. So obviously this has been sent away to be blasted and painted as well. It looks $1 million. On your rings, we've got to check our ring gap. So drop your ring in, piston to make sure it's sitting square, and we don't want a gap smaller than 9th thou, and that is. So I'm going to have to dress off the end of the ring. This is a little oil stain. So there's two things I'll stain on this, and that's that very corner on either ring. So I'll just drag it across to take this really sharp corner off. And that's it. Turn it around and I'll do the other side. And that just takes this very sharp corner off right here. I'll obviously go and stain these until I can get the correct ring gap. But that's basically it with the barrel. Alright, what I'm doing now is heating up the engine case. I've got a digital readout thermometer, so that just measures surface temperature. I've only just started doing this. Generally I wouldn't use a blowtorch. I've actually used an electric heat gun, like a paint stripper gun. But about a minute ago it decided to crap itself and throw a few sparks and die. So it let all the smoke out of it, and once you let the smoke out of something electrical, it don't work again. So over the back over here I've got my bearing drifts. They're aluminium, so if the bearings just don't drop in the way I want them to, I can just give them a tap to get them home. And as you can see, I've got this sitting on a piece of wood. That way, if I do have to tap it, I'm not damaging any of those surfaces around the back there. You can see I've got a little hole here. That's where the dowel to sit in, so the whole lot sits square. So that's getting a bit of temperature in it. We'll have a look and see what we've got. No, we've only got about 25 degrees, So the other thing too is with the bearings. Buy your bearings from somewhere reputable. There are ship bearings around out there, and the bearings you want are called C3 bearings. C3 bearings are essential, especially on your mains, because they're an slightly more open clearance bearing that allows for the heat of the engine to expand the bearing a bit, and the bearing won't lock up. I actually have a motorbike called a Kajiva Mito that I got for not very much at all, and the reason that the engine had seized up on it was because someone rebuilt the engine with standard bearings in it, and the bearings locked up. So if you're not going to buy from one of the good Bantam parts dealers and you're going to risk it on eBay, make sure that the bearings that you're getting are C3 bearings. Very important. That's what we want. Okay. So they've both just dropped in nicely. I'm going to leave it sit there. The bearing that comes in from I've obviously got to put a seal in here, but I'm not going to punch it in while the engine case is so hot. Your bearing from the other side, it will I'll let this cool down a bit before I drop that in. If you want to know a rough temperature, I'd say anywhere from 80 to 100 degrees C. Interestingly enough, when you get the heat in it, and I don't know, I can't pick it up because it's hot. If you can see that in there, but that's oil and stuff leaching out of the casing. So if you want another good indicator of how warm to get it before you drop your bearings in, have a look for that. Which is why welding this stuff can sometimes be a real pain in the bum. Alright, it's time to put seals in. So with all these center punch marks, I went around earlier on and just with the scraper and just took the dings out of it. I don't, I never hammer these in, I'll make sure I press them in so all the seals will get pressed in. And that's it. And that's the correct way to put a Bantam seal in, facing with the spring facing out. So you can see it's got a tiny little bit of a lip there, which they do. But it's hard up against the bearing. So I'll go around and I'll press in the other bearings on the other side, and while I'm at it I'll also press in the bearing that goes in the main shaft oil seal holder, so that's done as well. Alright, so we're getting ready to do the left hand crankcase. So one of the things I do, I've got this nice sleeve, I actually press this bearing on to the gear. And as you can see, the reason I do that is so you're pushing only on the inside race and you're not damaging the bearing. And then we'll push that into the crankcase. The other thing I've done is I've actually put this bearing retainer plate in. There's no gasket on it. All I've done is put it in dry. That gives me a shoulder to be able to press the bearing up to so it'll be in the right position. I'll take this off and obviously put the gasket in later. All I do is put this on so it positions the bearing. So we're ready to heat this up and drop bearings in now.